Hello everybody and welcome back to another video. Since the Chengdu Hunters have yet to announce their roster, today I'm going to do a different video. I'm going to be going through the 10 rookies going into the 2023 season that I am the most excited to watch. Now this is a personal list. This is not necessarily who I think are going to be the 10 best or who I think are going to be like my guesses in terms of these order from least likely to most likely in Rookie of the Year. There's nothing like that. I did another one of these last year, and I think I may not have made it clear to people the point of it. This is not my top 10 rookies watch list in terms of who I think are going to be the 10 best rookies. This is just a personal list of the 10 rookies I'm most excited to see. It's mostly in order, not fully in order. It's pretty casual. I'm just kind of go down the list 10 to 1 and talk about the ones that I'm interested in seeing, why I'm interested in seeing them, and whatnot. This is an interesting season. I think a lot of people, myself included, would have expected there to be quite a few rookies this year, considering the situation going on with the APAC region. And I think a lot of people expected there to be a ton of rookie talent this year. But really, we're seeing instead more teams are just going with slim rosters with a lot of veteran guys, right? You know, teams that we look at very, very positively, like Houston and Boston, have no rookies on their team. The Hangzhou Spark have no rookies on their team. Then you have teams like Atlanta or Vancouver that have one rookie on their team. The Gladiators have no rookies. You know, the Shock are kind of the outlier. They have a lot of rookies. They have 3, and they might have the most amount of rookies in the league. You know, London is 2. New York has 1. So if you look around, there are rookies, but there's really not as many this year as there have been in years past. If I remember correctly, there's like 14 of them, so 4 of them I'm not going to mention in this video. I expect there to be more, honestly. I expect Chengdu to have a couple on their team minimum. But like I said, this video casual. I'm just going to go through, talk about some of the rookies, and we'll take a look at all of the different rookies. Fun fact, of the 10 players I'm going to mention on this list, only one of them has an official Overwatch League portrait yet, despite the fact that most of them are in NA. So I don't know what the deal with that is, but we'll see, I guess, as we go. But let's jump in, and let's start from the bottom of the list. Number 10, I am going to give that to Aniyun, the only rookie player on the New York Excelsior. I know there's going to be some people who wonder why she's on this list. Like I said, we didn't see her play in the Pro-Am, but she's a player that I'm interested in seeing for a couple of reasons. One, she's the only rookie on the New York Excelsior. As you know, I'm a New York Excelsior fan. Even through all of the weird that they have done this past offseason, I still do really like this team. I do like the New York Excelsior a lot, and I like what they've done. I think their team looks interesting. And I also really like that she's from New York. And also, it's really important that we get more female representation in the Overwatch League. More women in the league is a good thing. So I'm very excited for her to be in the league. I'm very intrigued by what she does. Whether or not she plays a lot, we'll see. But I think she's an interesting player to be in the league. I think it's cool that she's here. I think that's, for me, really why it's exciting, right? I think there's a lot of times you get rookies where it's just like the natural turnover of players, and sometimes they're good, sometimes they're bad. This is more of I think it's more meaningful to the Overwatch scene as a whole and the community as a whole to have someone like Aniyun in the league. So I'm very excited for her to be able to hopefully get some play time this year, and we'll see her doing some things for New York this year. But I have her low on this list mainly because I don't think she's going to be a huge piece of the New York team this year. But I'm certainly excited to see her get an opportunity to play at some point this season. Moving on to number 9, I'm going to shout out Viper for the Shanghai Dragons. An interesting player on this team, one of the first of many O2 Blast players on this list. He's an interesting player. I think it's interesting to kind of see what he does on this team alongside Heesang. I was Heesang. Heesoo, who is the other DPS player for the Shanghai Dragons. Obviously, this roster is really weird. I don't have a ton of faith in this team in terms of just kind of their overall level of performance. They haven't looked, we haven't seen them play yet, but their roster is really weird and really odd. And so, I don't think this team is going to be doing incredible things this year in terms of really, really, really being like a huge team that's like the big story for this team. It's just not what I expect. But I think Viper's interesting. He's the only rookie on this team. I think he's a really interesting piece to this team. I'm curious to kind of see what he's able to do. But like I said, because I don't think this team is going to be all that exceptional, it's hard for me to put him any higher than this. But I do think he's interesting. I think it's an interesting addition. And there's so many O2 Blast players here that I'm curious to see kind of where he fits into some of these other guys from that O2 Blast roster. So that's why I got him here on this list. Next, at number 8, I have LeeSooMin, the rookie support player for the Seoul Dynasty. Most people think he is going to be the team's flex support. He also plays some Brig, so I really don't know. There's leaked scrims we saw. He was the one playing flex support, and Krillin was playing main support. So I expect him to be the main support for this, or flex support for this team. Once again, really interesting team. I really don't know what to expect for the APAC region. I don't expect the APAC region to be super good this year, so a lot of the APAC rookies that I have on this list are on the lower end. Not all of them, but a lot of them are. Just because we don't know what to expect. It's a weird region this year. So I hope that he's a good player that does good things and kind of performs well. He obviously has history with Gen G as an organization. He was with the Gen G organization for better part of 2 years, from late 2020 to early 2022. So interested to see kind of what he does now moving over to the Seoul Dynasty as one of their new players, the only rookie in that support line. So an interesting team, to say the least, but certainly a player who I am just intrigued by. I like support a lot. Support's my go-to role, and I think it's always cool to see rookie flex supports and to see kind of how the role changes. I don't know what impact he's going to have, but he's an interesting player, so I thought I'd throw him on the list. Next, number 7, I have Junbin for the San Francisco Shock. Really, he could maybe be higher on this list, but I chose to put him lower. I made this list a little while ago, and so maybe Junbin could move up now that we've seen him play quite a bit in the Pro-Am. But he's interesting, right? He's a young player, 17. Basically, because of the change to the age requirement, he was able to join the league for the entirety of this season. He's going to be the kind of main tank specialist for the Shock, so stuff like Winston, Ball, Reinhardt you would expect. Though we saw them switching between these two, Junbin and Max, quite a bit. So I had Junbin a little bit lower on here because I don't think Junbin is the guy who has the most hype surrounding him this year, which is why I'm a little less excited about him than I am Max. Spoilers, Max will be on this list. But Junbin is definitely a huge part of this team's potential success. We saw last year that the Shock really needed to kind of bring in Mikey to kind of play Ball and those main tank heroes, because you don't want to be someone you don't want to have a team where you are stuck out of certain compositions, and that's clearly why they brought in Junbin. So it'd be interesting to see the dynamic here on the Shock with Junbin and Max, but Junbin to me just a little less exciting of a player because there's not the same hype around him as there is Max. But still a very good player, still someone I'm really intrigued by. And I'm excited to see what the Shock do around Junbin this year, because I think Ball is potentially the most interesting hero to kind of see. There's a lot of teams have to bring in Ball specialists. We've seen Max play some Winston, so I think Max might be their go-to guy. But who knows? That's what makes this really, really fun to kind of predict and try to theorize about. So all in on Junbin, I think, for one of the most exciting rookies this year. Up next is Bliss, the only rookie on the defending champion Dallas Fuel. Main support player, comes in to, be the guy to potentially help this team repeat. Lots of intrigue around Bliss. I know a lot of people talked about whether or not he would go to the Shock, and people were higher on Vindime than they were on Bliss. And so I think there is kind of a bit of a chip on the shoulder of Bliss that he could have been the guy to go over to that Shock roster, and they opted to go with Vindime instead. And so for me, I look at him and I look at this player and I see an interesting main support player on a good team, someone who found success last year on O2 Blast, and a Dallas Fuel team that found success. You're kind of bringing in championship Overwatch League team, championship contenders player, a marriage that should be made in heaven. And it's an interesting one, right? It's the new support line for this Dallas Fuel with, Hanbin and Sparkle and Edison returning as the damage duo and the tank. So there's some intrigue there to kind of see how Bliss compares to what they had last year with Chio, how MCD compares to what they had with Fielder. So I think there's storylines and narratives that make Bliss interesting. But kind of similar to what you have with Viper and LeeSooMin. I just don't think the APAC region is as good or as intriguing this year as what the West is. So he's lower on this list than some others are, but he's definitely one of the players I'm most interested in seeing, just based on what we kind of saw from this O2 Blast and Dallas Fuel team last year. Something that will be interesting to see as we go forward. Up next, I have Donghak for the Atlanta Reign, the tank Wrecking Ball Winston extraordinaire. He definitely piqued my interest when he was added to this team, because I definitely think that having just Hawk was not the move for this team. It's something that I felt like they needed to have another tank player just to kind of round out the full extent of what they're able to do, specifically that kind of Wrecking Ball. And he certainly piqued my interest with the way that Hawk has talked about him, the way we kind of saw him in the Pro-Am, and being the only rookie on that team with a lot of really good veterans, guys who've been around, who've been very successful in the league. You know, Lip has won, Chio and Fielder have won. So it's a very unique team in this Atlanta Reign, with one rookie who I think is going to be a huge part of this team's success. Similar to how I think, Junbin being able to play ball is very, very important. I think Donghak being able to play ball, being able to play Winston at a high level could be the thing that elevates this team to be grand finalists or tournament winners, whatever it may be. And so I think it's really interesting to kind of have him on this team. And the fact that he was added so late, definitely interest-piquing move. I don't know what to expect out of Donghak, really. I don't know, the full extent of what he's going to be. But he's piqued my interest. I don't think he's going to be the best rookie of the year, necessarily. But I think he'll be one of the best rookies in the season. And I think he is one of the guys to keep your eye on for this season, because he's intriguing. And I think every time a rookie comes into a team like the Atlanta Reign, where you have all these big name players, these really well-known guys in the community, these really well-known guys in the scene, it's always interesting to kind of see what happens with the new guys. And that's why he interests me. Next, we have Prophet for the Seoul Dynasty. Of course, O2 Blast Prophet, not Prophet with an F, legendary Prophet. This is going to be a pain all season, isn't it? I always said it won't be that bad. It is going to be that bad, isn't it? Anyway, another guy from O2 Blast, hit scan player. I think he's intriguing, and why he's pretty high on this list compared to some of the other guys from the APAC region. He's the highest ranked APAC rookie I have on this list, is because I think there is a level of chip on his shoulder. The community narrative, at least some of the analyst narrative that I've heard, is that Prophet's kind of a one-trick. He really only played Widow when he was in O2 Blast, but O2 Blast is such a talented team with such depth and so many good players that he might not be your best Sojourn, so you take him off on Sojourn, but he might still be a good Sojourn, and maybe he's still a good Cassidy, a good Ashe, but you really only brought him in when you need him for Widow because you have other players who may be a little bit better on some of those other heroes. So I think there's a cool chip on his shoulder narrative here, and he's playing alongside, legendary GOAT Prophet, the greatest Overwatch League player of all time. And so there is a really interesting dynamic here of a player with a chip on his shoulder playing with the greatest player of all time, playing alongside Void. And I think there's this really interesting team dynamic that comes out of that. So I'm very excited to see what he's able to do, how he's able to play alongside his buddy Prophet, and what we're able to get there with those two as a duo. I think they're the most interesting duo in the APAC region in terms of just we don't know exactly what we're going to get. You know what to expect out of Sparkle and Edison. I mean, Shy and Leaf, they're definitely the one that I'm most excited by of the duos in the APAC region. But this one's one of the more unknown quantities, and so I'm excited to kind of see what they're able to do this season as a duo. Moving on, number 3, I have Max. Obviously, I teased he'd be on here before. He is, I think, for most people, the Rookie of the Year frontrunner, though I think the addition of Junbin certainly makes it interesting for this team, because you have a guy in Max who's known for, the Diva, the Zarya, the Sigma, and those kind of off-tank heroes, but we saw him play a bit of Winston. We also have Junbin on this team as well, who kind of makes it interesting what we're going to see there, and there could be some competition there in terms of who plays what and who does what. So I think it's definitely interesting. Like I said, I think a lot of people have him as the front runner for MVP, or for Rookie of the Year, not MVP, for Rookie of the Year. And he very well could be. We haven't seen this team yet. We haven't seen this team at their full strength yet, I should say. We have seen them, but we haven't seen them at their full strength. And so it's interesting. I think he's a really interesting player. He's definitely the most hyped up rookie coming into this year. He's one of two, I would argue, coming into this year, and so he'll be really interesting to watch. Generally speaking, I have been burnt by tanks, rookie tanks in particular, too often. Mag came in, didn't look as good as we kind of thought he would. So rookie tanks don't tend to have the same impact that you think they might going into the season. So I don't think Max is the one I'm most excited to watch. I certainly think he's in one of the best positions to succeed, and I certainly think he's a front runner for Rookie of the Year. And he's definitely one of my top ones I think is going to be exciting to watch. For me, the intrigue isn't so much I'm excited to see him watch plays, it's I'm excited to see if he's able to live up to the hype that is being placed on him. Because I think that was one of the things that really hurt Mag, is there was so much hype around him and he just did not live up to it. Is Max going to be the same, or is he going to be different? Will we see more of the kind of success that we expect out of him? Or will he kind of struggle in the way that Mag did? I don't know. It's intriguing. It's interesting. And so I'm excited to see what he does this year. At number 2, I have the other, I think, most hyped up rookie going into the season, and that is Heesang, the other San Francisco Shock rookie, DPS extraordinaire, really, really good player, phenomenal in contenders. He struggled a bit in the Pro-Am, but I still think he looks to be one of the most interesting players coming into the season. Really, really good tracer, really good on, things like Genji. We saw him play Sombra quite a bit in the Pro-Am, where he looked better on Sombra than he did when he was on the Tracer, but some of that's just because Proper's really good. But he's another player that I think is one of the front runners for Rookie of the Year. I think more people are excited about Max, and I think the reason for that is because I think Heesang probably is not going to be the primary guy for the Shock in the way that Max would be as the tank, because Heesang's going to be playing second fiddle to Proper most of the season, and if they get another hit scan player, which I think they probably will, Heesang probably gets benched for stuff like that. So I think there's reason why Heesang is not necessarily as hyped up as a Rookie of the Year pick, but I think Heesang was so good, especially in 2021. He was one of the few players in Korean contenders who could even rival Proper, right? Like, Proper was far and away better than everybody else, except Heesang. He was better than Heesang, but he wasn't far and away better than Heesang. And, that was when Heesang was playing on Talent Esports. Proper gets signed to the league, and Heesang is then brought over to O2 Blast and kind of takes Proper's spot. So I think he's an interesting player, right? I don't think he's necessarily the best player coming into the season, but I think he's certainly an exciting player. I think there's a lot of intrigue around him to see if he can kind of keep up that legacy that he has, keep up some of that O2 Blast DPS legacy as well. So I'm very excited for what he is able to do. I'm very excited to see how well he plays this season. And I think there's so much intrigue around him as a player that it's hard to not be excited about him coming back and joining in on the wonders that are this kind of Shock roster with all these really good rookies. I'm intrigued, to say the least, and excited to see what he's able to do. Number 1, though, the most exciting rookie to me, and I don't think there's much of a surprise. I think a lot of people would agree with me. It is Sugarfree. Sugarfree, of course, youngest guy to join a team in history. He was, 13 when he joined ATL Academy. Was around for a long time. Went to Valorant, comes back, and we already saw him play in the Pro-Am, and he looked really good. So I think that Sugarfree is just the most exciting rookie. He very similar to what we had with Potifon last year, where Potifon was a player who he did live up to the hype, even if he did kind of leave the league earlier than we would have liked to see. He lives up to the hype. Potifon was an incredible player in Overwatch when he was still playing. He goes to Valorant, succeeds there, comes back, and we see what he's able to do. Sugarfree is kind of Potifon light in the sense that he joined younger than Potifon did. But then also, he didn't have that same success in Valorant when he left. He was still good, but he didn't find that kind of high-level success that you had from Potifon. But Sugarfree comes back and looked really, really good. He is the young hero that we kind of view as like one of the best players from American contenders in a long time, in the same similar camp and vein as players like OG from last year, right? And Speedily from last year. Like, these were guys who were legendary names. So it was like when they are old enough to get to the Overwatch League, this is like when the NA American resurgence will happen, because it was such a Korean dominated league for a long time. And we looked at players like OG and Speedily and Sugarfree as potentially like the next guys up in NA contenders, and to come into the Overwatch League and potentially have a huge kind of impact in the game. So now he's here. Now he's in the league. Now he is ready to go. And I'm really excited to see him play. Finally, after all these years, we are getting the Sugarfree experience at the top level. So yeah, those are the rookies that I'm most excited for this year. Like I said, not necessarily who they're going to be the best rookies, just the ones I'm most excited for. The list is mostly, it's pretty flexible. Really, I would say like Sugarfree is number 1, Heesang is number 2, Max is number 3. The rest of the spots, somewhat flexible. It is kind of an interesting season for rookies, because I said there's not a ton of them. What will be very interesting to see is to compare some of these players play in comparison to some of the contenders' talent that'll be in the APAC region, because the way that format works would be some more contenders teams. So I'm excited to see that. That's going to be really interesting to see and kind of see how that comparison goes. But let me know in the comments down below which rookie you were most excited to see play this year. If there's one I didn't mention, I didn't mention the guys on London. It's just not a team I'm particularly excited about in the same way I'm excited for some of these other guys. But there's other rookies as well, whose names I didn't mention, that you could certainly shout out as well as kind of names that are really intriguing. But that's it for me for this one. Thank you all so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, want more like it in the future, consider liking and subscribing. And as always, I hope you're all staying safe and staying healthy. And until next time, bye-bye.